Welcome back to the channel. My name is Steven. I'm a pharmacist and I own 52 units of real estate. So today I want to talk about an 8-unit apartment complex. I'm helping one of my students underwrite, and I'm having them do the 3-offer method that I preach now and what I do myself personally. So the first offer, it's always going to be a DSCR loan. So this is your conventional loan, where typically it's 25% down, 20 to 30 year amortized, depending on the age of the property. So we buy C-class assets typically. So you're gonna think 20-year AM or 25-year AM, depending on which bank you work with, and the interest rate's gonna be 8%. So this debt service coverage ratio loan has to be greater than 1.25. So that means that if your monthly debt service has to be, your NOI has to be 25% greater than your monthly debt service. So for example, if your monthly debt service is $10,000 a month, then your minimum NOI must be $12,500 is going to be your minimum NOI in order to have that debt service coverage ratio of 1.25. So that's the first offer, is your conventional debt service coverage ratio loan. The second offer is the 50-40-10 loan. So this is 50% down. You're going to ask the seller to carry 40% and you're going to put 10% down. This loan is amortized over 30 years. It's through Velocity Mortgage, and it's a nice loan product because sometimes the seller doesn't want to fully seller finance the deal. So it gives you the best of both worlds, in the sense of me as a buyer, I'm putting 10% down, and then the seller, they're still getting 60% of their money, carrying 40% in the loan, but they get 60% of their money to do what they need to do, whether that's help a kid off a down payment, whether that's put money into a business, whether that's to buy more real estate, and they still get monthly interest on that. So that's the 50-40 loan. And then the last option is 90% seller financing. So this one is more straightforward. So this property must be owned free and clear, at which point you would put 10% down and the seller would basically become the bank. And typically when I do seller financing, my starting point is typically 10% down. You can spread that 10% down payment over 5 years, for example. So you can do 2% year 1, 2% year 2, all the way up to year 5. And typically the interest rate I start at is around 5%. And for seller financing terms, for both the 50-40-10 as well as the 90% seller financing, the minimum I want for the balloon is 10 years. Ideally, you want it as long as possible. So to kind of summarize, the first offer, it's your debt service coverage ratio loan. This is a traditional bank where you're putting 25% down. The seller is going to get all their money. This is the lowest offer, right? This is always the lowest offer because I'm at the mercy of interest rates and I'm at the mercy of the bank. Option 2 is the 50-40-10 loan. So this is the midpoint offer. So typically it's a little bit higher than the debt service coverage ratio offer because the first 50%, the interest rate's about 9%. So it's higher, right? It's higher than 8%. But the 40%, if you can get the seller to agree to 1%, 2%, 3% seller carry, then your blended interest rate, so let's just say you get a 1% seller carry interest rate. So if you have 50% is at 9% interest and you have 40% at 1% interest, on average your interest rate's going to be about 5%, a little bit higher than 5%, right? And if you have let's say a 3% seller carry and 9% interest rate on the first 50%, then your blended interest rate is going to be about 6%, right? So and probably the question you're going to ask me is, well, Steven, why would someone want to carry 1%, 2%, 3%? Well, I personally wouldn't, but you aren't the seller, right? So don't project your beliefs onto the seller, right? Never do that. Just pitch it and then see how the seller responds, right? Like I said, I wouldn't do that, but maybe the seller does, right? So, and then in option 3, once again, this only works if the property is owned free and clear. You have to put 10% down, 30 year, 10% down, 5% interest. and then at least a 10-year term on this deal. And this is my highest offer. So now that you kind of know the 3 offer method, I have another video talking about it. Let me kind of deep dive into this 8-unit apartment complex. So typically we send out direct mail. That's what I do in the coaching program. We use PropStream to get our data. I use Yell Letters Complete to do my outsourced direct mail campaign. I have referral links, both of those down below, but that's what my mentorship specializes in, is direct mail and using PropStream and direct mail to get off-market leads. And when you go off-market, I have a whole video talking about it, but you have opportunities to talk directly to the seller. You cut out the broker, you cut out the real estate agent, and you're able to build trust, and you're able to find owners who own deals, maybe free and clear, maybe they're willing to do creative financing, because it's easier to explain creative financing when you can talk directly to the seller versus I have to talk to my broker about creative financing, who talks to their broker about creative financing, who then talks to the seller, right? And by the time it gets to the seller, it's passed through 3 people, and now the message is misconstrued and no one understands anything, and it's confusing. And when things get confusing, the seller says no, right? So anyways, so it's an 8-unit apartment complex, all 2-bedroom, 2 baths. I think currently 2 units are vacant right now. So occupancy, it's 6 out of 8, which is 75%. Let's see, the average rent is around $1,000 based on the pro forma rent. So typically this is based on Section 8, which is public data. You can use Retometer, apartments.com, talk to your property manager. Those are the 4 ways that I find rental comps. We believe the pro forma rent is around $1,200, so about $200 more per door. So if you times that by 8 units, there's a potential of $1,600 a month in extra cash flow potentially. And then from there, we want to get a recent rent roll and a T12, which is the profit and loss statement for the past 12 months. So the current NOI is about $40,000. So typically we're going to take our gross rents, and you're going to see the expenses, and minimum expenses can be 50%, right? 50% is going to be your minimum expense. So from there, NOI is about 40,000. So at most, you can't do the math. So this thing's getting about $1,000 per door, $6,000 times 12. So I can't do that math off the top of my head, but it's about maybe close to like 72 to 80K. So if the gross rental income is 80K, your expense is going to be 40K, and your NOI is going to be 40K. So based on the pro forma, based on these higher rents, I guess he believes that the pro forma NOI is going to be around 70K. So we think we can increase the NOI by 30,000. And then once the NOI is 30,000 increase, assuming like, let's say a 10 cap for simplicity, you can increase the value of the 8-unit apartment complex by $300,000, for example. So from there, so those are kind of our numbers to start. From here, I always have my students look up the tax assessed price just to get a ballpark gauge of how much it's worth. Usually the tax assessed price is the lowest price. So this is $600,000 is the tax assessed price. So let's talk about the owner. So the owner is out of state, and he's motivated to sell because he owns a lot of properties, but this one 8-unit is a little bit further away from his other cluster of properties. So his property manager is based in, I guess, San Antonio, Texas, and all his other properties that he owns is about an hour away. So this is kind of the redheaded stepchild that he wants to get rid of. And this is what I mean. Like, when people own real estate, there's always 1 or 2 deals that they want to sell, right? So for him and his property manager, this property is so far away, it's harder to manage because they have to drive further, and because of that, they want to sell it, right? So he seems motivated because he wants to sell by the end of this year. So, typically when we talk to owners, I have my students go through 10 questions. I think it's 10 to 12 questions that they'll ask the owner. This is how he gets his information, right? So it's systematized. But typically we say, tell me about the property, why you're looking to sell. And, if you build trust and rapport, they give you a lot of good information. So he got a lot of good information from this owner, and he's been talking to this owner for, I want to say like 2 months now. Since the start of the year, actually. So actually about a month. Out of state, he wants to sell because it's the redhead stepchild of his portfolio. It's not close to his other units, so he owns multiple properties. He's retired, and he doesn't want to deal with the property anymore. It's too far. Maybe it's too much of a headache. He's happy with the mailbox money he's been getting from his property manager every month. So why that's important, because if he likes mailbox money, then he's open to seller financing, right? Because essentially, when you become the bank, you get mailbox money, right? Whether you're doing the 50-40-10 loan, he's carrying 40, he's getting mailbox money. If he's doing 90% seller carry, then he's getting mailbox money without the headache of management, and it makes his property manager's life easier because now they just can focus in their cluster versus this one outlier property that's an hour away. He actually owns a property free and clear. So when you go on PropStream, you search the address, you can see there's no loan, right? So this screams that you can do seller financing, right, from this. And so what's his seller motivation? He wants to sell because he wants to help his daughter with some cash on a down payment to buy her new house. So there you go. That's your motivation. Owned free and clear, wants to use the money to basically help his daughter, right, buy a house, and he likes mailbox money. So this screams to me like a 50-40-10 loan, right? And I'll explain later, right? But out the gate, this is a 50-40-10 loan. That's the win-win situation, right? Like I said, with creative financing, you want to create win-win situations. So with the 50-40-10 loan, the seller will get 60% of his money, and he can use that 60% of the money to help his daughter with the down payment on the house. But also, he's carrying 40% still, so he's still getting that mailbox money, right? And he pays less capital gains tax, and he doesn't deal with the property anymore. The property manager's happy because they don't have to deal with this property anymore either, right? So yeah, that's the motivation. And then, so he has a price in mind of $900,000 because he had some comps from a realtor friend. So this is why I have a video saying most realtors are not good for real estate investors, because sales comps, if you're using sales comps for 1 to 4 units to value an 8+ unit or 8 unit apartment complex, they're valued differently. 1 to 4 units is valued based on how much your neighbor house sells for. The value of an 8 unit or 5+ unit apartment complex is based on your net operating income divided by the market cap rate. So residential real estate, 1 to 4 units, the value is based on what the neighbor's house sells for. If your neighbor's house, which is a single family home, duplex, triplex, fourplex, sells for $100,000 and yours is the same thing right next door, yours is worth $100,000. If you have an 8 unit apartment complex, 2 right next to each other, one has an NOI of $40,000, one has an NOI of $80,000, the one with the NOI of $80,000 is worth double, right? So this is different. So the realtor friend is clearly a residential realtor, and they don't know how to evaluate multifamily properties. So that's going to be the challenge that we're going to have to overcome, right? Is to get them to learn that the value is based on the income. So basically, my student showed him like, hey, like my lender doesn't value this based on sales comps. My lender values this based on your rent roll and your T12, which is your net operating income divided by your market cap rate. So, I think the owner has that expectation now set in place. So, okay, now I have the picture painted, right? So let me summarize this real quick again, in case you got lost. So there's an 8 unit apartment complex. 6 out of 8 are occupied. The current rent is $1,000 a month. Performer rent is about $1,200. The current NOI is $40,000. We think the NOI can be $70,000 after raising the rents to market rents. Maybe some renovations needed. We're going to do our 3 offers, right? So, and then the owner, he's out of state. He's motivated to sell. It's the redheaded stepchild of his portfolio. It's inconvenient for his property manager. He owns it free and clear. He wants the money to help his daughter with a down payment. He likes mailbox money. And he has a price of $900,000 in his mind, right? So okay. So now I'm gonna look at my 3 offers and then compare that to the tax assessed price of $600,000. So the tax assessed price is public information. You can literally Google the property address and you'll find the tax assessed price, right? And then that's my starting point, right? So $600,000. Okay, so there you go. $600,000. That's the price I kind of have in my mind. But now let's run the numbers. So the first offer, which is the debt service coverage ratio bank loan, and our offer price is going to be $440K, right? And this is based on 25% down, 25-year AM, 8% interest, right? And the term might be like 7 to 10 years is what I typically teach my students, right? I want longer term for that. So the limiting factor is you have to have that debt service coverage ratio of 1.25, right? So it's easy math, right? So you have your NOI, and then if your NOI, that NOI has to be 25% higher than your monthly debt service payment. So assuming these terms, 25% down, 25-year AM, 8% interest, the offer is going to be $440K, right? So that's less than tax assessed price, right? So the offer one is $440K based on the DSCSR, and it's the lowest offer, like I said. So offer two is the 50-40-10 loan, which I think this one's going to be the winner, right? Given the situation. So this offer is going to be around $520K. So it's about $520K, which is $8,000 more than that prior offer. And how the terms are going to work is that he's going to put 10% down. The first 50% from Velocity Mortgage is going to be at 9% interest, so it's a little bit higher, right? The 40% seller carry, we're going to pitch 1% at first, right? And why we want that 1% is because the blended interest rate is going to be about 5%, right? So because of the lower interest rate, we're able to offer a more aggressive price of $520, right, versus $440. And the 50-40-10 loan, it's fixed for 30 years. There's no balloon payment, right, which is nice. There's some prepayment penalty, but for the seller carry, a minimum is going to be a 10-year seller carry, right? So you can do your value add strategy. You could raise the rents, do the renovations, and do cash out refinance. Pay off Velocity. Hopefully, don't get hit by big prepayment penalties. You can pay off the seller carry second, and then get your money back, get your renovation cost back, get your down payment back, right? Do the perfect BRRRR. So why I think this is the best offer is because, once again, the owner will get 60% of the money. So it's $520. So roughly the owner is going to get about $230,000 back. And that can be used to help his daughter do a down payment on her house, right? Instead of getting all the, $520, he gets about $230 of it. And he'll carry $200 of it at 1% interest, which, isn't going to be much money. That's what, $2,000 a year. Divide that by 12. So, what's that? $300 a month in money. But hey, maybe that can go to him or go to his daughter, right? To help them out. So, he may go up, but what I tell them is that, well, if he wants a higher interest rate, so what I do is I pitch a 1% interest rate, and my offer is gonna be $520. But if he wants like a 3% interest rate seller carry, then my offer is gonna be a little bit less, because now my blended interest rate is gonna be higher, right? It went from 5% to 6% blended interest rate. If he wants a 5% seller carry, my blended interest rate is 7%, right? So the higher the interest rate that the seller wants, the lower my offer is going to be, right? It's just math, right? We show the sellers the math, right? When we do the 50-40-10 offer. So, so I think this one's going to be the win-win situation, because like I said, he gets his money, 60% of it, give the money to his daughter, down payment, gets monthly income that he can use for himself, or that he could just, give that cash flow to help his daughter with her new mortgage, right? And the option three, which is feasible because he owns his property free and clear, is the 90% seller financing, which the offer is going to be $660, and this is 10% down, assuming a 5% interest rate, and at least a 10-year balloon, right? And this one, so like once again, this offer is $140K higher than the 50-40-10 loan, and it's almost $220K higher than the option one, right? So that's what I mean by, like, if you use a conventional bank, you make a less aggressive offer. So I think option three is not going to work because, like I said, he wants his money. Like, he doesn't want to carry 90%. If I only gave him $67K, that might not be enough for a down payment, depending on where you are. Maybe it is. So that's why the 50-40-10 is, and then option one, it's too low of an offer, right? $440. I mean, by all means, like, if he can buy for $440, get all his money, great. Or he can get $520, which is $80K more. He can sell or carry, about $200, get $230 in his pocket, and then use that to help his daughter put down a payment on her house. His tax liability is gonna be less aggressive, right? So we always pitch these three offers to owners and explain each option. And then, like, at that point, I'll be like, you know what? I think option two is the best for you, and this is why, right? So like I said, you are on the same team. You want to create that win-win situation, right? So like I said, on interest rate, I tell them, like, I'm asking you for a 1% seller finance carry because I'm offering you a higher price to make up for that, right? Versus if I give you a higher interest rate, my offer is going to go down. So it's just math. You just run the numbers, right? Like, because you need to cash flow as the buyer, and you have to do your value add strategy and raise the rents, right? So that's kind of how I talked my student through the offer and how to strategize the offer, and want to share with you guys. And then, so one of the biggest concerns that we had was his current property manager. So he owns other properties in Texas, said that they actually don't feel comfortable doing property management for this area. So for me, that's instant red flag, right? And why is that a red flag? It's because you don't want to buy in bad areas, right? So like I've owned a mobile home park in a D-class area, high crime, difficult tenants, more turnover, more evictions. No amount of money can fix a bad area, right? And then with D-class tenants, they're the type of tenants where you need a property manager who is more hands-on. They have to like knock on the door every single month to collect the rents, deal with evictions, and not many property managers want to deal with that. So I think his property manager's like, no, I don't want to deal with that type of tenant. So the area, it's kind of transitory. So I think it's in the path of progress, but they're concerned that it's not going to attract high-end tenants that want to stay long-term, and they don't want to deal with tenant turnover, and they don't want to be chasing rents every month. And I agree, like if it's truly a bad area, then I would stay away. So he already had two of his property managers turn down the deal. So to me, that's a red flag. But I said, hey, talk to a third property manager, see what their thoughts are. But like you said, like don't be blinded by the deal. Like the numbers can make sense, but even if the number makes sense in a bad area, it's still a bad deal, right? Because you don't want to deal with that high crime long term. So I just told him, like, talk to a third one, talk to your property managers again, see why they don't want to manage it, but that's already a red flag. And if you get the deal under contract, then maybe you can wholesale the deal to somebody who wants to take that risk, right? But like for me and my students, I tell them not to. But if he wants to take the risk, then like I said, just know what you're getting yourself into, right? Because it may not be something that you want to hold long term. Maybe it's something that maybe if you buy it, it's not a good area. Maybe you just buy it, you renovate it, you put new tenants in at higher rent, and then you flip it to the next seller, right? So you don't want to hold this long term if it's not a good area. So anyways, this is kind of a rundown of how I underwrite an 8-unit apartment complex with one of my students, how we do the 3-offer method, and how we understand the seller motivations when making our 3 offers, right? And then basically being able to pick which offer makes the most sense for the seller given the situation. So in this case, the 50-40-10 loan product is good, right? So if you want to do something similar, please send me an email. My email's in my link tree, but I can connect you with my broker or my loan officer from Velocity Mortgage who's helping me do the 50-40-10 loans. I plan on using it because it's game changing for that middle ground offer. And let me know what questions you have. Let me know what comments you have. If you want to join my mentorship program and do one-on-one coaching, check the link down below. Otherwise, please like, comment, subscribe, and hope to see you in the next one. Thank you so much.